Hello again. We're back for Melissa Reed's Avatar, Book 1. Last time we left off, we had just met Shar, Ensign Thirashar Thane, my first introduction to an Andorian character. Now, let's continue. Kira was on an audio channel with the I'm sure I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Aldebaran's first officer, a pleasantly efficient woman named Tisseverlin Jana. After giving the lieutenant commander an update on station repairs, we have a guest. Hello. Hello, Sammy. You want to help me read? After giving the lieutenant commander an update on station repairs and a rundown on expected arrivals and departures, Kira dutifully listened as Jana briefly went over the day's scheduled off-duty boarding parties. She also had several questions about the station's environmental control capabilities, particularly in the holosuites. The Aldebaran, I'll probably pronounce this 4 different ways. Aldebaran's 2 Denevian crew members were up for leave and were hoping to be able to get out of their suits for a while. It seemed that Aldebaran's hollow facilities couldn't manage the intense conditions they required for more than an hour at a time. You're very distracting. Say hi. Good boy. I'm sure Quark has a program, Kira offered, her voice sounding far away, as if someone else were speaking. We had a freighter crew come through just a couple months ago, and they had a Denevian on board. He spent a lot of time at Quark's. Jana said something Jana said something about how grateful the 2 ensigns would be, and started telling an anecdote about one of their suits leaking heated slime into the captain's ready room. But with their business concluded, Kira's thoughts were already elsewhere. She liked Jana, but she wasn't in the mood to talk. She needed to work, to move, to not dwell on Rayla. A friendly chat would bring her too close to letting her guard down, and having to force polite laughter was probably beyond her current capabilities. Although she'd gotten a lot better at it since taking command, diplomacy had never been her strong suit. When Jast showed up for their daily progress meeting, Kira, relieved, apologized for having to cut Jana's story short and quickly signed off. Jast waited patiently, pad in hand, looking as composed and calm as always. "Good morning, Colonel," Jast said. "I'm sorry I didn't get here sooner. I spent the last few hours dealing with the Defiant's computer refit. Have you had a chance to look over Nog's proposal for expanding the tactical capacity? You know, I was concerned when I first met him. He's so young, but his ideas are quite innovative." Kira nodded. He inherited something of his father's technological genius. Bye, Sam. Ah, the Grand Nagus. Rom, isn't it? Kira nodded again. What do I say about the murder? How do I start? Jast accidentally saved her, her bright countenance fading to solemn. I haven't had a chance to read any reports on what happened this morning, but Esri mentioned it. Terrible. Anything Starfleet should know, or was it a civilian matter? Kira cleared her throat. Ro is looking into it. At this point, there doesn't seem to be any motive beyond robbery. Good. It's a sorrowful affair, but with the state of things, we don't need another Federation complication. I've already worn out my welcome with Starfleet on our behalf. They keep telling me we'll just have to wait for more techs, that with the Aldebaran keeping watch, we don't need to hurry with the weapons arrays. That doesn't sound good. Kira felt she was putting up a good front, but Jast must have seen something. She frowned, the raised ridge that ran down the center of her face wrinkling. Colonel, what is it? What's wrong? With the huge responsibilities that they shared, the commander had become a friend in a relatively short period. Jest had been hard to get used to at the beginning, the relationship initially somewhat adversarial. But Tyrus had finally relaxed. She'd made an effort to see how things worked at a deep space station and started accommodating. Kira had come to respect the woman's honesty and sincerity, and thought Jest was coming to feel the same. On the other hand, she and Jest were still at the foundation level of a friendship, and it just didn't feel right. Not yet. Besides, Kira had come to pride herself on the high degree of professionalism she had reached with all of her new officers. It made things easier, having a clean separation between the private and professional areas of her life. Bad enough that she'd already slipped in front of Ro Laren, of all people, who had been obstinately unfriendly since the day she'd arrived. "I don't know if Ro can handle the investigation," Kira said abruptly, answering Jess's question with a partial truth. "She's never done anything like this before, and what if it wasn't a robbery? I thought security would work out for her, but I may have been wrong. She hasn't even been able to identify the killer yet." Expressionless, Jess watched her for a moment, and then spoke slowly, as if choosing her words carefully. "She is new, but maybe you should see how things progress before you consider replacing her." Kira was surprised. "You're in Starfleet." "Yes, and I know her history," Jess conceded. "Her Starfleet file actually makes rather interesting reading, especially once you realize what's missing from it. But there are multiple truths to a story, and for all of Ro's missteps, she's also not afraid to cause a disturbance in order to reach her objective. That's why she was sent here, wasn't it? It would seem to me that you'd want someone in security to be headstrong, even aggressive sometimes, and she does have the tactical background." She had a point, though Kira found herself reluctant to recognize it. It wasn't just Ro's past, although Kira was anything but reassured by her record. Her Starfleet career had been a disaster, marked by bad calls and questionable choices. Many of the Starfleet people in the crew considered her a traitor and a criminal twice over, and being forced to work alongside her, because the Bajoran government had insisted on her assignment to DS9, was doing nothing good for the tension level on the station. There was also her abrasive manner and her obvious disinterest, even scorn, for her own heritage, her own cultural beliefs. Our cultural beliefs. Ro didn't hide her rejection of the prophets, and everything from conversation all the way down to deliberately wearing her earring on the wrong side, as if she was daring anyone to object. Maybe Kira was letting her personal feelings about Ro influence her ability to evaluate her performance. Kira sighed, deciding that it could wait for further analysis. Picking herself apart after the morning she'd had was more than she could stand. "I want to be fair," Kira said. "It's not as if we have anyone to replace her with." They didn't either. Nog had acted as head of security for a couple weeks after Odo's departure, but it had been a temporary measure, much to Quark's eternal disappointment. Nog was much better suited to engineering anyway. It's hard to imagine Nog as head of security. "It's your territory, of course," Jess said. "As for our ongoing upgrade frustrations, why don't we go to an early lunch and work through a new schedule? Nog insists that things will progress faster if we regulate the EPS conduit outflow for the next few days." Jess smiled suddenly. "Maybe we could have Quark make us up a couple of black holes. Just to enhance our creativity, of course." In spite of how very wrung out she felt, Kira found herself smiling back and thinking that perhaps it wasn't too soon, after all, to think of Jest as a good friend. The prophets knew she needed as many as she can get. Poor Kira. I think she has a point about maintaining professional distance between herself and her subordinates. I think Picard would agree. But it's also not a very DS9 thing. Sisko was friends, or if not friends, he would socialize with his crew. I don't know that either way is right or wrong. I think they both have merit. But in Kira's case here, I think she's less subscribing to Picard's way of doing things than she's purposely isolating herself, which is just bad news for her. Although she seems to be hopeful about being friends with Jast. And she is not at all hopeful about being friends with Ro. It's funny. I know when Deep Space Nine was first being conceived, thought of, at first they considered bringing character Ro in to be in Kira's spot before they decided to create a new character. So it's kind of hilarious to have Ro on the station now, and for her and Kira to not be getting along that well. So we'll see that tension continue, I'm sure. And there's a new ship around that I can't pronounce. Aldebaran. I don't know if that's a reference or if it's supposed to be an alien word. I think I like it being an alien word because why should every Starfleet ship have some kind of reference back to humans or Earth history? So we'll see what's going on with the Aldebaran. And one more time, might be not Glare Trek Book Club. Please go check that out. And we will continue chapter 3 in the next video. Lights are weird. Light flare. Bye.